Ignite to impact.
Welcome. You're listening to Ignite to Impact, a podcast that talks about life, leadership, and legacy to inspire positive meaning change within ourselves and in others. I'm Dr. Geneva, your host, and we sit down with influencers to find out how they do what they do to make an impact, to make a difference. If you like this podcast, I hope that you'll subscribe and give me a 5-star rating. Not a 2 or a 3-star, but a 5-star rating. I'm just so delighted to welcome to our podcast Dr. Sandye Johnson out of Harlem, New York. Now, I know you've probably even heard about Dr. Johnson. She's an award-winning educator, someone who has impacted children for many, many years. She's well known in her community, and she recently won the Black Women's Agenda Award for being an inspirational educator, someone who cares deeply about children and has unleashed her influence on making a difference. So she's with me today. Good morning, Sandye Johnson.
Good morning, Dr. Geneva.
And how are you, my darling?
I'm feeling great on this Sunday morning.
Yes.
Great weather in New York.
Yes. Well, listen, you're in Harlem. Tell us about growing up in Harlem and how you got started in education.
Well, growing up in Harlem, Harlem, if you've never been here, is a really tight community. I mean, when you go out in the morning, no matter who you pass, everyone says good morning. It's a very tight-knit community. Life was great for me as a child. However, it was interesting that my parents never sent me to public school in the community that I lived in. Unfortunately, the schools were not the best schools at that time. And so using their resources, they had to find other public schools outside of the community that we lived in that they thought could meet their expectations.
Mm-hmm. And so you went to Morgan State, and I just have to let everybody know that, we were at Morgan together, and we pledged together, and we joined the great sorority of Alpha Kappa Alpha. Those were some good days, weren't they?
They were great. And, being at Morgan, it just made my life so different. It set me on a different trajectory in life that had I not gone to Morgan, you probably would not be talking to me as a great educator in Harlem. HBCU not only gives you a great education, it also helps you build who you are and defines who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm. So
plus, I met my best friend there.
That's right. Yeah. And for those of my listeners who do not know, I figured I'd wait till we kind of got into the conversation and then let you know that you're talking to my bestie. Okay. And so I thought I'd bring you this surprise and delight. I've shared with my listeners, Sandye, over the years that I was going to bring you on as soon as I could get you on. And so this is a special treat. This sister here, I could go on and on about it, but I'm going to ask her a series of questions. We'll have this conversation so that Sandye, my listeners can learn about you and all the greatness and inspiration that you bring to people every day, particularly young people. So I want to go back for a moment and just have you share how you share again for us how you got started in education, because if I remember, it was back in the classroom with young girls. I can't remember the exact name of the organization, but I know you started back then. Tell us about that.
Okay, well, I'll even go back further than that. When I was in school at Morgan, I was a psych major, and so it was my thought that I would become a psychiatrist. But when I found out how many years it took to become a doctor, I said, no, I didn't want to be in school that long. So I kind of switched my thoughts to becoming a teacher, working with children who were severely challenged, not only educationally, but social-emotionally. So I came back to New York, got my master's at Bank Street College of Education, which is one of the leading progressive education colleges in the United States. And I then proceeded to work with young people, elementary all the way through high school, students who were actually diagnosed as emotionally disturbed. Many of them were on psychotropic medication. And the reason I chose this population to work with is most people don't want to work with these kids because the rewards are not immediate. They're very challenging. They have a lot of issues with processing information in the classroom, and it can be very frustrating and challenging. But when you make an impact with a child that has so many challenges, the rewards are priceless. And so that's why I worked with students who were that challenged. And to be honest with you, Geneva, we talk about this all the time. You know, I was a challenged student myself in high school. Not because I was having educational problems, but because I was hanging out with the wrong people. And if it wasn't for people who were concerned about me, who knew the gifts, talents that I had that may not have surfaced yet, and hung in with me, is the reason that I am successful today. So I think that should be an opportunity for all kids, whether they are on grade level, not on grade level, challenged, not challenged, that people who work with them can see beyond what they demonstrate on the surface. They can see who they are as a person and bring them to the high expectations that they have.
You know, Sandy, but that takes a special kind of person to be able to do what you just said, to, you know, take a moment to pause, to really step in the shoes of some young person they want to help, and then really work with them. How do you do it? What was there? Was there an aha moment or something that got you on this journey? What is it? How do you do what you do?
I believe in paying it forward. And what people did for me, I need to take that benefit that it made for me, gave to me, and pass it on. And that's what I did with my students. And I can tell you, I've been educated, 42 years? My students still text me. I mean, I still have conversations with them. And what's great, which doesn't happen mostly in urban areas, is that the school leaders do not live in the community. They travel in and out. I lived 3 blocks from the school that I ran for 16 years. And so the students were not just my students. They were my neighbors. Their parents were my neighbors, you know. And so there was a different line of communication, different way that I was able to interact with them. And to be honest, Geneva, it's just common sense, you know. It doesn't take much to make a difference in a child's life. You just have to know that you can do it. And no matter what the obstacles are, they should not be blinders for you from stopping and working with kids, because they can be very challenging. They can come out of themselves They can talk to you in a way that is very disrespectful because they're having a challenging moment. But as long as you don't take that personally and understand how that child is operating, then you have the tools to help give them the tools that they know when they come to this situation again, that they can come out in a different way. So it's not rocket science, but it takes someone who is authentic, who is genuine, and really understands that working with kids is not more than a job. It's more than a job. It's leaving a legacy in your community.
So, Sandye, you've been recognized by Time Warner as one of the top principals in the country. And the National Black Women's Agenda just gave you a prestigious award for all your education work. And a lot of that was directed at what you did in creating, making possible the Thurgood Marshall Academy for Learning and Social Change in Harlem. Can you tell us about that and how you used your influence to make that academy become all it is today?
Well, let me put it in some historical context. Thurgood Marshall Academy was born 25 years ago out of the need to create better public schools in the central Harlem community. Historically, parents have chosen to send their children outside the community they live in because they felt the schools in the community did not meet their expectations. And it was a thought that parents shouldn't have to have their children travel outside of the community they live in. They should be able to find good schools where they live. And so through my church, Abyssinian Baptist Church, and our Community Development Corporation, Abyssinian Development Corporation, we partnered with the Department of Ed, and myself and about 8 other church members wrote the proposal for Thurgood Marshall Academy to begin as one of the first 12 smaller learning environments that were implemented in the New York City public school system 25 years ago. However, when the school opened, everyone was excited. You know, we were able to have almost 100% input, to hiring staff, creating curriculum. But there was some confusion in that back then of a partnership with New York City public schools and a faith-based institution. And so the support that we could have gotten from the community representing the Board of Ed didn't happen. And unfortunately, the first 3 years, the school did not do well. There was a different principal every year. Those of you who are around my age and remember that film Up the Down Staircase, whatever could go wrong with the school went wrong with Thurgood Marshall Academy in the first 3 years. And I became the principal in the 4th year. It was not on my career path. Never wanted to be a principal. I had the certification, but was looking at using it in a different way. However, with the threat of the school closing, it would send a real bad signal in our community that our community could not be good partners in developing good public schools where we live. And so I took that leap of faith. One of my favorite Bible verses is, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. And I went from being a teacher in a classroom of 10 students one day, and next day I was a principal of a school. And what helped me be successful in that, because, beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had a vision. I knew what should be happening in the school environment. I knew what the kids should be learning. I knew what the teachers should be doing. I just had to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But I knew I couldn't do it by myself. So I did, I think, three strategic things, either two or three. One is I brought the staff together on my very first day of my appointment as principal during the summer. And I told them that usually when a school is failing like this, they usually get rid of all the teachers. They change the name of the school. They keep the two students, and then they reopen again in September. I told them I was not going to get rid of any of the teachers because I felt that they did not get the support and professional development help that they needed. And I would commit to making sure that they had that support. However, if I saw no change at the end of the year, then we would have to have a different conversation. Secondly, the school did not have any partnerships. And so I went out in the community and did an aggressive campaign to develop partnerships that could provide supportive resources that could help the students in areas that they needed help that my budget could not provide for. And thirdly, I did a marketing campaign to let the community know that it's a new day at Thurgood Marshall. Yes, we were not doing well the first 3 years, but this is a new year. We have a new vision, and really wanted not just the community, but the parents and the students to know that I'm here to stay. We're going to make it work, but we all have to be in this boat together. And I can't tell you how quickly, within a couple of months, the school turned around. Because I think everybody felt they had they owned the school. They had a piece of the school. And they took pride in when we did improve, that they knew that their participation helped to make that happen.
Phenomenal. Those 3 steps, I mean, just such leadership lessons in themselves, bringing people together and telling them about the vision and letting them know that, hey, it really isn't about you at this point. It's about the support that we can create for you, and going out into the community, establishing those strategic relationships, and then letting people know it's a new day. Just leadership lessons. And so you turned it. Yes, please.
I just didn't go to organizations. I went into the local bodegas, or you may call them grocery stores in Detroit. I don't know what you call them. I went into the barbershops where I got my nails gelled. I put flyers in the nail salons. I talked to people in the braiding salons. I mean, I really went to every part of my community to let them know that we are creating a top quality public school in the community they live in, so that they could take pride. And this year we celebrated our 25th anniversary. Oh, it was such a glorious event. We developed 5 film shorts that journeyed us over a period of 25 years. And we raised almost $80,000 to support the schools in our community in their after-school program. And that money was raised by our community. So I am just so blessed to be part of this journey. Few people make the impact on children the way we have at Thurgood Marshall Academy. And the students from my first graduating class 20 years ago called me a month ago, and they are celebrating their 20th anniversary in New York next weekend. And they did it on their own. And they all will tell you, had it not been for Thurgood Marshall Academy, not just for the educational opportunities, but for the supportive services, number one, and what I call the background exposure experiences. If you just allow me to explain that. Many of our kids grow up and only experience life within the 10 blocks they live in. And so that's how they create their world. That's how they interpret information in the classroom when they're reading unknown texts. It's based on those 10 blocks they live in. But once you provide them with exposure outside of their community, introduce them to other cultures, introduce them to other countries, introduce them to other ways of living, introduce them to other types of food, introduce them to students their age that live outside of their community. It gives them a whole different world to interpret their experiences and hopefully to make good decisions that will lead them to become thriving, productive and thriving adults when they leave us.
So you turned around, you of course with others, with the community, but you're the leader. You turned around Thurgood Marshall Academy from its 3 years of not doing very well at all to become designated as an International Baccalaureate World School. Tell us what that is and some of the other turnaround things that happen with these young people.
Well, number one is most of the students that come to our school are first generation high school graduates. And so I think one thing that we did well is to give them opportunities to explore college and career readiness opportunities so that when they graduate from high school, that just wasn't the end of their journey, that they had a plan of how they can have a successful post-secondary career.
And what's the International Baccalaureate World School? What is that?
Okay, well, the International Baccalaureate School, again in historical context, was founded, I can't remember, maybe about 50 or 60 years ago, by educators who were affiliated with the United Nations. And when parents were assigned to international different countries, and their assignment might switch from, let's say, Brazil to Germany, they were always having to change their child from one educational system to the other. So this was an attempt to create an international educational structure that no matter what country this child went to school in, that it would be a similar educational framework from the country that they were taking classes in before. And it's a very rigorous program. It's highly accredited by universities and colleges. It's even looked at more rigorously, being more rigorous than AP courses that students take.
And that's advanced placement courses.
Yes, that's advanced placement courses.
And so you brought that to Thurgood Marshall?
Well, let's not just say Thurgood Marshall. New York City at that time only had one school that was an IB school, and it was not in Harlem.
Okay.
And so I felt that we should have an IB school in Harlem too.
All right.
So, it was a struggle. It was a struggle because it wasn't supported by our budget. We didn't have enough monies to support the membership fee. But, again, we networked with partners and was able to raise money to provide the resources to become a certified IB what they call a middle years program, which means that it starts in sixth grade. And what's great about this program is that if it continues into high school, a student can actually take courses that are equivalent to college level courses, and they can really complete 1 year of college while in high school.
My goodness.
Yeah, unfortunately, we could not continue. We could not continue getting the resources to support the program.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, that and again, as you do this turnaround management, as you create these turnaround, opportunities, there's ups and downs. Can you tell us about, what was a great challenge that you faced and how you overcame it?
Well, there's always a challenge of money. I don't care what people say. The budget that are given to schools is not sufficient to provide an enriching program. And so it's always a challenge in writing grants, getting funding, drying out your resources for funding, and always having to look for new funding. And so it's a constant challenge, but it doesn't stop me from my vision. I know most people look at their budget to say, this is what we can do. I look at what we need to do, and then I go out and find the money.
Figure it out. Yes. Yeah, so you see the vision, what ought to be, and then you just figure it out. So Dr. Johnson, Sandye, my girl, knowing what you know now and all your experiences, renowned educator, born and bred in the community, stay there to make an impact and a difference in the neighborhood, on parents and their children, started out in the classroom, had that one-to-one experience, and then created and turned around and a school for the betterment of young people. Knowing what you know now about all of that, what would you tell your younger self about life, leadership, and legacy?
Wow, my younger self was a long time ago.
So if you could, yeah, okay, yes. and so what would you say? It wasn't you're not that long ago. It's just a minute, a moment.
I don't think I would tell myself anything different. I think I would say to myself, never let anything compromise the integrity of the vision that you have for something. Never let anyone define who you are by their expectations, but define yourself as far as what you expect of yourself and what you want to do. And yes, there are going to be some challenges. Ayanna Van Zandt says, it's okay to be, you're going to have challenges, but she says it's okay to be in the valley. You just can't stay in the valley. And the valley will always teach you a lesson when you come out. So, yeah, that's about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, during our conversation, as we're winding down, but during our conversation, and I so much appreciate, as always, learning from you, you talked about legacy. You used that word very intentionally. So let us know, what do you think about when you say the word legacy?
When I say the word legacy, it means to me that my life, what I've done in my life, and how I've impacted young people will make a significant difference, not in just their lives, but in our community. And it will never be forgotten. No one, I may be gone years forward, and they may not remember specifically my name, but they will remember what I did and what it led to as far as increasing the quality of education in the Harlem community. When they go past that new facility that we built on 135th Street and Adam Clayton Tower Boulevard, the first new high school building built in Harlem in over now 60 years, the building that Mrs. Thurgood Marshall, who is named after her husband, Justice Thurgood Marshall, came to our ribbon-cutting ceremony. That building is a legacy, and it would not have been built had we not put in our blood, sweat, and tears to turn around that school and to provide quality educational opportunities for our children. So that's a legacy. That's leaving a path. You're opening up a path for other people to come through, hopefully not to have as many challenges as you had to make that happen for them, and let them be able to resolve or deal with any obstacles or challenges that they face. That's a legacy. A legacy is something you can't forget, and that you will always remember, and that you will see within the space that you have created that legacy. So for me, the legacy that I leave is in Central Harlem, starting the journey, starting the campaign of having quality education in the community they live in, particularly since our community is being quickly gentrified, and the benefits of gentrification is not being reflected in our public schools in Harlem, or nor is there an investment from the businesses that are moving in.
Dr. Sandye Johnson, I mean, just such an amazing commentary on legacy and its purpose. And you're continuing, you haven't stopped one bit, because right now, after, turning around, being in the classroom, starting and helping turn around Thurgood Marshall Academy, going into retirement, but then coming out as now you are the co-director of Harlem Renaissance Education Pipeline. You still doing it, as an AKA soror, as a graduate of an HBCU, as the leader of a learning institution that has received accolades from all over the country, but most importantly has made a real difference in the lives of children. Just thank you so much for being a part of this conversation about how anyone can use their influence to make a positive impact on themselves, on their lives, in the community. We just love you, my sister, girl, best friend. Thank you for being here with me on Ignite to Impact.
Ignite to Impact.